In a land where the sun kissed the golden dunes of the desert and the stars whispered ancient secrets to the night sky, there lived a boy whose destiny was woven into the very fabric of time, a boy whose beauty rivaled the moon and whose soul carried the weight of prophecy. This is the mesmerizing tale of Hazrat Yousaf, alayhi salam, a story of betrayal and loyalty, of dreams and deliverance, of the darkest pits and the highest thrones. It begins not in a palace, but in the heart of a father who saw the future through the eyes of his beloved son. Yaqub, alayhi salam, a noble prophet and devoted father, cherished his son Yusuf more than words could contain. Yusuf, even in his tender youth, carried a light that drew hearts to him, a purity and grace that set him apart from his 11 brothers. One night, young Yusuf came to his father with a vision that shimmered with mystery. "Oh my father," he said, his eyes wide with wonder. "Indeed I saw 11 stars, the sun and the moon. I saw them prostrating to me." A silence fell. Yaqub, A.S., deeply moved yet cautious, recognized the divine origin of the dream. "Oh my son," he said with solemn love, "do not relate your vision to your brothers, lest they plot against you. Surely, Satan is an open enemy to mankind." He knew that envy, the seed of many tragedies, had already taken root in their hearts. And so it happened. The brothers, inflamed by jealousy, conspired against the innocent Yusuf. With voices sweetened by deceit, they begged their father, "Send him with us tomorrow, that he may play and enjoy himself. We will surely guard him." Reluctantly, and with a heart heavy as stone, Yaqub agreed, though his soul trembled with unseen dread. That day, the sun seemed to hesitate before rising, and when Yusuf was led to the wilderness, the winds themselves carried warnings. The brothers, hardened by jealousy, cast him into the dark depths of a well, stripping him not only of his tunic, but of the comfort of his father's arms. Alone in that cold earthen prison, Yusuf's tears mingled with the silent stones. But Allah, most merciful, had not forsaken him. A caravan, passing through the barren land, stopped to draw water. As the bucket was pulled up, they saw not water, but a radiant boy, shining as though he were carved from starlight. "Oh, good news," they cried. "Here is a boy." And they took him, not as a guest, not as a child of destiny, but as a commodity to be sold in the markets of Egypt. There, in the bustling city, with its towering pillars and echoing halls, Yusuf was purchased by a high-ranking official, the Aziz of Egypt. "Make his stay comfortable," the Aziz told his wife. "He may benefit us, or we may adopt him as a son." And so, the boy who was once cast aside now walked the marbled halls of power. In the house of the Aziz, Yusuf grew in wisdom, grace, and stature. His beauty became legendary, a beauty that was more than skin deep, for it was the reflection of divine favor. Yet beauty, like gold, draws both awe and danger. The wife of the Aziz, captivated by his presence, sought to seduce him. She, who had everything, desired the one thing she could not have. She cornered him, her intentions unspoken but clear. Yusuf, noble and God-fearing, fled, running not only from sin but toward the purity of his faith. In her shame, she twisted the tale, casting blame upon him. A trial followed, and though the truth flickered behind every word, it was Yusuf who was imprisoned, not for guilt, but for virtue. The prison walls could not contain his light. There, among thieves and outcasts, Yusuf, A.S., became a beacon of wisdom. 2 fellow inmates, troubled by dreams, turned to him for interpretation. One dreamt of pressing wine for a king, the other of carrying bread that birds ate from. Yusuf listened, his calm eyes steady. "As for one of you," he said gently, "he will serve wine to his master. As for the other, he will be crucified, and the birds will eat from his head." And it happened just as he foretold. To the one who would return to the palace, Yusuf made a single request: "Mention me to your master." But time, as it often does, swept that memory away, until the king himself was troubled by a dream none could decipher. "I see 7 fat cows being eaten by 7 lean ones," he said, disturbed. "And 7 green ears of corn, and others dry." The man remembered. "There is a man in prison," he said, "who can reveal the truth behind dreams." And so, Yusuf was summoned. Clean-shaven and robed anew, Yusuf stood before the king, not as a prisoner, but as a man of God. He listened, then spoke. You will have 7 years of prosperity, followed by 7 of hardship. Store your harvest wisely. The king, awestruck by his clarity and wisdom, appointed Yusuf to oversee the granaries of Egypt. And thus, the boy who was thrown into a well now sat upon the seat of power. But the story does not end with thrones and robes. It was during the years of famine that fate brought the past to his doorstep. From distant Canaan, the land of his childhood, a group of weary brothers made their way to Egypt, the same brothers who once conspired to cast him away. Hunger had driven them, and Egypt, under Yusuf's stewardship, had become the cradle of sustenance. They stood before him, not knowing the man before them was the brother they betrayed. Time and pain had veiled his identity, but Yusuf knew them. His gaze lingered not with bitterness, but with the quiet storm of memory. He questioned them sternly, veiling his heart behind the mask of authority. You are spies, he declared. You have come to scout the land. They pleaded their innocence, recounting their family, their father, and a younger brother left behind. Yusuf listened. The mention of Binyamin, his full brother, struck a hidden chord. He tested them, demanding they bring Binyamin to prove their honesty, keeping one of them, Simeon, as a hostage. The brothers returned to Yaqub, A.S., telling him of the ruler's demand. Grief once again darkened their home. Yaqub, still mourning Yusuf, was now being asked to risk his youngest. Shall I trust you with him, he asked, as I once trusted you with his brother? But famine presses even the strongest hearts. With great sorrow and caution, he allowed Binyamin to go, placing his trust not in the hands of men, but in Allah alone. When they returned to Egypt, Yusuf's heart swelled at the sight of his brother. He took Binyamin aside and whispered, Indeed, I am your brother, so do not despair over what they used to do. In a clever plan to keep him close, Yusuf placed a royal cup in Binyamin's bag and accused him of theft. The guards searched the bags, and when the cup was found, the brothers cried out in disbelief. They begged for mercy, offering themselves in his place. It was then that Yusuf saw the stirrings of remorse, a spark of redemption in their desperate pleas. But he held firm, for the time of revelation had not yet come. They returned again to their father, their words heavy with regret. Yaqub, now struck with the loss of yet another son, turned to the heavens. His eyes, clouded with sorrow and endless weeping, lost their sight. Yet his heart, lit by divine certainty, did not falter. Indeed, he said, I only complain of my suffering and grief to Allah, and I know from Allah that which you do not know. And so, he urged them, O my sons, go and search for Yusuf and his brother, and do not despair of the mercy of Allah. Indeed, none despairs of Allah's mercy except the disbelieving people. The brothers once more made their way to Egypt, broken and humbled. They pleaded before Yusuf for aid, their voices trembling with desperation. It was then, in that moment of absolute surrender, that Yusuf could no longer restrain himself. His soul, filled with the fire of compassion, could not watch them suffer further. I am Yusuf, he revealed, his voice steady yet soaked in emotion. And this is my brother. Allah has certainly favored us. Indeed, he who fears Allah and is patient, then surely Allah does not allow the reward of the good doers to be lost. Silence gripped the air. The brothers stood stunned, their past sins roaring in their ears. By Allah, they whispered, indeed Allah has preferred you over us, and we were certainly sinners. Yusuf, noble as ever, did not seek vengeance. No blame will there be upon you today, he said, echoing the mercy of his Lord. May Allah forgive you, and He is the most merciful of the merciful. He then gave them his shirt, instructing them to place it upon their father's face. His sight will return. The caravan departed, and even before it arrived, Yaqub, A.S., from far away, lifted his head. Indeed, he said, I perceive the scent of Yusuf, if only you do not think me weakened by age. And when the shirt touched his face, light returned to his eyes, as if the years of sorrow had never been. Then Yaqub and his family, all of them, journeyed to Egypt. As they entered, Yusuf went out to meet them, tears streaming down his face. He embraced his father, holding him close after years of longing. "Enter Egypt, Allah willing, in security," he said. And there, in the grand halls of the palace, Yousaf raised his parents upon the throne beside him, and his brothers bowed in respect before him. The dream of his childhood, the sun, the moon, and 11 stars, had come true. "This is the explanation of my vision of before," Yousaf said, now reflecting on the thread that had bound his fate. "My Lord has made it a reality. He was certainly good to me when he took me out of prison and brought you here from the desert, after Satan had sown enmity between me and my brothers. Indeed, my Lord is subtle in what he wills. Truly, he is the all-knowing, the all-wise." But even in the glory of triumph, Yousaf, A.S., did not forget the source of all favor. Alone, in quiet devotion, he turned to the heavens with a prayer that has echoed through time. "My Lord, you have given me some authority and taught me the interpretation of dreams. Creator of the heavens and the earth, you are my protector in this world and the hereafter. Let me die as one submitting to you, and join me with the righteous." His life, a tapestry of trials and mercy, stood as a beacon for all generations. In the land where he once stood as a stranger, Yousaf, A.S., now walked with dignity, his every step a testimony to divine justice and unwavering faith. Though the throne had been adorned with jewels, and the courts echoed with the reverence of his name, Yousaf's heart remained untouched by pride. Power had not changed him. It had only deepened his humility. He governed with wisdom and compassion, ensuring that justice reached the weakest and that no soul went unheard. His family now lived in peace, reunited after years of grief, scattered pain drawn into a single embrace. The wounds left by betrayal had not vanished, but they were softened by forgiveness, a forgiveness so sincere it became part of his legacy. Among his brothers, guilt had transformed into gratitude. They saw in Yousaf not just a sibling, but a guide, someone whose steadfastness in the face of cruelty had elevated him above vengeance. In the quiet chambers of his home, Yousaf would often reflect upon the strange journey that life had taken him through. The well, the marketplace, the palace, the prison, each one had been a lesson, a step closer to the divine purpose etched into his soul since before his birth. He had been sold for a few silver coins, yet now held the keys to Egypt's treasures. But it was not wealth that made him content. It was knowing that his Lord had never abandoned him, not even in the darkest hour. People from far and wide came to seek his counsel. His reputation as a just and noble leader had reached beyond borders. The poor found comfort in his fairness, the rich were humbled by his integrity, and the scholars admired his insight. Yet, to every question, to every praise, Yousaf would always attribute the wisdom to Allah. "It is not from me," he would say softly, "but from the one who gives light to hearts and knowledge to those who are patient." Even his time in prison, once a place of solitude and trial, had become a turning point for others. The man who once served wine to the king never forgot the kindness Yousaf showed in those stone walls. He would often speak of the prophet whose character never wavered, whose words seemed lit by divine flame. Many who heard of Yousaf's story found their own hearts moved to belief, for what could be more powerful than a man who had every reason to seek revenge, and instead chose mercy? Among the people, he was a ruler. Among the believers, he was a prophet. But in his heart, he remained a servant of Allah, of truth, of love. He often visited the poor in disguise, gave without being known, and prayed in the quietest hours of the night. His tears would fall not for what he had lost, but for the greatness of what he had gained, nearness to his Creator. His father, Yaqub, A.S., now old and content, would sit by his side and smile. The eyes that had once wept until they went blind now saw clearly the fulfillment of hope. "O Yousaf," he would sometimes say, holding his son's hand, "how wondrous is the promise of our Lord. He never forgets, though men may despair." And Yousaf would respond with a gentle nod, his face lit with humility. Binyamin too had grown into a man of strength and faith, often by his brother's side, learning from his patience and adopting his noble qualities. The younger children of the household would gather at Yousaf's feet, their eyes wide as he told them stories, not of his trials, but of Allah's mercy. "Never forget," he would say to them, "that hardship is not a punishment. It is the polishing of the soul. And in every loss, Allah is planting a greater gift. Yet, even in peace, Yusuf remained vigilant of his inner state. He knew this world was a place of passage, not permanence. The treasures of Egypt, the respect of nations, the love of people, all of it was dust before the face of Allah. And so, he longed, in secret, for the company of those who had walked the path of truth before him. His ancestors, Ibrahim, Ishaq, and of course, his father Yaqub. In the royal chambers, surrounded by the warmth of family and the light of faith, Yusuf would often retreat to solitude, whispering the same prayer he had made upon his reunion with his father. "My Lord," he would say in the stillness of dawn, "let me die as one who submits to you, and join me with the righteous." He did not seek death out of sadness, but from a soul fulfilled, a soul that had tasted the sweetness of closeness to Allah and yearned for the true home beyond this fleeting world. Years passed, and the once young boy of Canaan became a man known throughout the lands as a prophet of unwavering dignity and divine insight. His story, written not just in scrolls but in hearts, would echo through the ages as a beacon for all who suffer injustice, for all who wait through storms, and for all who believe in the unseen promise of their Lord. And still, he lived on, guiding, serving, remembering. Though age began to line his noble face and silver dusted the once dark strands of his hair, Yusuf, continued to serve his people with unwavering energy and clarity. Each day brought visitors seeking wisdom, judgments, or merely the comfort of a kind word, and none ever left his presence untouched by his character. His home was a place of remembrance, not of extravagance. The fragrance of piety lingered in its corners, and the recitation of divine words was as constant as the breath of life. He ruled not with the fear of power, but with the awe of accountability before Allah. No decision was made in haste, no case was dismissed without care, and no voice was too small to be heard. He often said to his advisers, "Let not the cry of the oppressed be delayed at your gates, for the one who hears it never slumbers." It was this balance of strength and softness, justice and mercy, that made the people of Egypt love him beyond title or duty. Despite the abundance around him, Yusuf's soul remained detached. He slept little, ate simply, and remembered often. In the quiet hours before dawn, he would walk among the sleeping city, whispering verses from the Torah revealed to his ancestors, lifting his hands in prayer for those who slept unaware of their Lord's mercy. His closeness to Allah was not in display but in devotion, pure, intimate, and constant. The children who once sat around him had now grown, and among them were those whom he had taught not just knowledge but the love of truth. He would tell them stories not of his own grandeur, but of the prophets before him, how Ibrahim, stood alone against a nation, how Musa, would one day rise to challenge a tyrant, how the light of guidance passes like a torch through every age. They listened, eyes wide, and he would gently smile and say, "Do not seek greatness in this world, seek righteousness, for the righteous are the true inheritors of the earth." Among his brothers, the bond had grown strong and sincere. The weight of their past was not erased, but Yusuf bore it with such grace that they could breathe freely again. They served alongside him, devoted to building a just and peaceful society. And while they knew they once cast him into darkness, he never used it to shame them. Instead, he turned their hearts with his humility until they themselves became reminders of repentance and redemption. His mother had long departed this world, but his father, Yaqub, now old and nearing the end of his journey, spent his days in quiet reflection beside Yusuf. Their time together was gentle and unspoken, filled with glances that carried entire lifetimes of love and longing. Sometimes they would sit in the orchard, beneath the soft shade of palm trees, and Yaqub would say, "You were the light in my blindness and the patience in my sorrow." Yusuf would kiss his father's hand and say, "And you were the anchor of my soul when I drifted in storms." When Yaqub, passed away, the house of Yusuf fell silent for days. Egypt wept with him. Though he buried his father with honor, his heart trembled with the weight of grief. Still, he did not withdraw from the world. Rather, he carried on with greater tenderness, as though the passing of his father had only deepened his connection to Allah. The years moved forward, but Yusuf never grew idle. He continued to interpret dreams for those who brought them, guiding people not just through symbols, but through the deeper meanings behind their desires and fears. "Dreams," he would say, are not always visions of the future. Sometimes they are mirrors of the soul. His insight became legend, but never did he allow such honor to breed pride. Every time someone thanked him, he would raise his eyes and say, "All praise is due to Allah, who teaches whom he wills." The palace remained the seat of governance, but his heart lived elsewhere, somewhere higher. And though he was surrounded by gold and silk, his own garments remained modest, his demeanor calm. Many foreign rulers sent gifts to him, hoping to win his favor. He accepted them, but gave most of them away, for he understood what truly lasted. The gifts of this world, he would remind, are like shadows at sunset, they stretch long, but disappear with the dark. And then one evening, as the sun dipped behind the pyramids, painting the sky in hues of fire and amber, Yousaf stood on the balcony of his quarters, his gaze distant, his thoughts far beyond the rivers and fields of Egypt. The wind carried the scent of jasmine and the faint murmur of prayers from the city. He closed his eyes and breathed deeply, his soul whispering to the heavens without a sound. He had everything, yet his heart yearned for what no kingdom could offer. Not just rest. Not just peace. But reunion, with his Lord, with the righteous, with the eternal truth. His prayer returned to his lips like an old companion. "Cause me to die as one who submits to you, and join me with the righteous." And as the stars pierced the indigo veil above, his soul remained anchored to that plea, awaiting the moment when the journey would resume beyond this world. As the days of Hazrat Yousaf neared their destined close, the heavens seemed to grow quieter, as if holding their breath for the departure of a soul so beautifully tested, so divinely honored. The land of Egypt, once foreign and treacherous to him, now stood as a witness to his legacy, a kingdom shaped not by the sword, but by the strength of faith, patience, and unmatched character. In his final days, there was no display of grandeur, no proclamation of death from the palaces. He lived with the same humility with which he had once stood alone in a dark well, unknown to the world, but fully known to his Lord. And it was to that same Lord he now turned with complete contentment. His heart, rich not in gold, but in remembrance, was ready to meet the one whose name he had whispered through joy and despair alike. One night, the stars shimmered more gently over Egypt. The moon hung low and full, and the wind moved softly, as though carrying an unseen message. In the silence of that night, Hazrat Yousaf, raised his hands in prayer, his eyes closed in longing, not sorrow. His lips moved in quiet conversation with the unseen, and his soul prepared for its final return. The angels who had once protected him in the pit, who had witnessed his patience in prison and his mercy in power, now descended once more, not to deliver him from trial, but to escort him home. It is said that the fragrance of paradise filled the room where he lay. Those near him did not feel fear, but a serenity so deep that it hushed even the most restless hearts. And in that sacred moment, Yousaf, returned to his Creator, his soul ascending with the nobility of a life perfectly fulfilled. His passing was not mourned with cries of despair, but with the awe of having witnessed a story so divinely orchestrated. Egypt wept, not just for the loss of a ruler, but for the departure of a light among men. Even the winds of Canaan seemed to sigh with the news, for the child who was once lost in its wilderness had now returned to eternity with the highest honor. His brothers, who once stood over the mouth of a well, now stood beside his resting place, their hearts transformed by the years of his grace. They wept openly, not only for the brother they had regained and lost again, but for the beauty of a soul who had taught them that no sin is greater than mercy, and no night longer than the promise of dawn. The scholars wrote of him not as a king, but as the embodiment of divine wisdom in human form. Generations would speak of his trials, not with pity, but with reverence. For his story was no ordinary tale. It was the living proof that when all doors are closed, the door of Allah remains open, that when hatred surrounds you, love born of truth can still triumph, that when the world forgets you, Allah remembers you more intimately than ever before. And his dream, the dream of the sun, the moon and 11 stars, it had not only come true, it had lived on. For Yousaf, became a light for every lost soul, every betrayed heart, every person abandoned by the world but held tightly by their Lord. His story became a lantern in the darkness for the oppressed, a banner of hope for the patient, a song of trust sung by every heart that believes even when sight is gone. He was buried with honor, but his real monument was not stone or gold. His monument was his legacy, a legacy that would live in the hearts of prophets to come, in the words of the Quran revealed centuries later, where Allah himself would say, "Indeed, in the story of Yusuf and his brothers are signs for those who seek." And so, centuries passed. Kingdoms rose and fell. Names were forgotten, palaces crumbled into dust, and rivers changed their course. But the story of Yusuf, A.S., remained, pure, undiminished, timeless. It was carried in the pages of divine revelation, recited in the hush of the night by seekers of truth, memorized by children whose hearts burned with love for the righteous, and retold to every soul who felt abandoned by the world. For the one thrown into a well by his own blood, the one falsely accused, the one imprisoned in silence, the one who forgave when he could have condemned, the one who ruled yet bowed only to Allah, his story would echo until the end of time. And what greater honor can a man attain than to have his life chosen by Allah himself to be a mirror of divine wisdom? Hazrat Yousaf, A.S., lived not just to teach Egypt, not just to guide his family, but to show the entire world that beauty lies not merely in the face, but in the heart that chooses patience, in the soul that clings to faith, and in the character that never breaks under trial. He lived a life of longing and fulfillment, of separation and reunion, of power and humility. And in every chapter of his story, Allah's presence was the constant companion. This was not the end of Yusuf's story. This was its beginning, in the hearts of all who hear it, who believe in it, who let it light their own path when the way seems lost. And in every such heart, the stars still bow.